And these are the kids whose parents gave them money. So they had the money to buy them off me. I just didn't have it. And so I started selling them. And I remember thinking, these cost 5 cents. This is one of the best lessons in school is 25-cent pack divided by 5 equals 5 cents. So I knew the cost. And I said, if I can sell them for 10 cents, I'll be doing pretty good. And I did that. And the next weekend, I took all that money and I bought more packs on Sunday at my grandma's house. And I took them back to the school. And now I learned something new. I'll never forget the moment where I learned supply and demand. I had this card called Fat Matt. And everybody thought it was hilarious and they wanted to buy it. So the price kept going up and I ended up selling it for $1. But my second son, $14,000 in the bank, still in high school, bought his first car, cash, used, $9,300 car. And it broke down pretty quickly. And man, he's a good kid and he works hard. He's an ultra marathon runner. He's a tough kid and he trains a lot and works. But I wanted to go out. I almost wanted to buy a car for him. It was an instinct that I had to go, poor kid, he's struggled and that car is destroyed now. And I mentioned it to my wife, and thank God she brought me back. She goes, wait, no, that's not what we do. And I sold him one of my cars for a couple thousand less than it was worth, but he had to pay it, and he did. Selling on the flea markets, eBay, selling even online in the beginning. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know but then I look back, and there were little moments. I learned how to sell in the flea markets from my uncle Jorge. So he would sell at the flea market. So that was that got me to selling in the flea markets. A friend said, why don't you try eBay? And then I sold on eBay. The rich dad that I had from Mexico who owned the brand and the factory, he told me, why don't you do trade shows? And then we talked a lot about things and he gave me different perspectives of seeing things more positively and that sort of thing. I had an ex-girlfriend in California and her stepdad invited me to go see his operation. It was the biggest business I'd ever walked into. He had like 100 and something employees or manufacturing. And so it's those little moments where I go, oh, this is what's possible. Maybe I can do it too. He puts his pants on one leg at a time. I do that.
Are you stuck in that $3 to $10 million year-over-year revenue? Roofs in a Box is your all-in-one growth partner for modern construction companies. They combine AI, virtual staffing, and CRM solutions to help streamline operations. Replace your high fixed overhead with cost-effective systems and support. They empower you to run a smarter, leaner business, freeing up capital where it matters most. Mention this ad to save 10% on your next Roofs in a Box purchase. This episode of Pain Points is brought to you by Ringba. If your business relies on phone calls, you need to be working with them. Their technology will help you get the most money out of your marketing campaigns. Their call exchange, Ringba X, can deliver inbounds on demand to help grow your customer base. Now, I want to be transparent. Ringba and Adam did pay me to deliver that message, but I'm also a customer, and I've watched them help dozens of companies become more successful over the years. So if you sell a product or service over the phone, I guarantee a moment with their team will be worth it. All right. Welcome to another episode of Pain Points, where real pain equals real growth. Today we got Joel Gandara. He's a Cuban immigrant, highly successful entrepreneur, sold and exited 14 companies, a successful father, husband, mentors other men, author, a book called 31 Daily Challenges, which actually challenges men on a daily basis to kind of just do something challenging for themselves to make them better people. And I'm excited to have you here, man. I know you're busy and I know you do a lot. So thanks for... I'm
excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Ed.
Right. So I guess just to jump right into it, give our audience just a little bit of a backstory about, because you have a humble beginning. You're an immigrant, right? You're Cuban, and you started working when you were young. So kind of just talk about your work ethic coming in and where you developed it from, and kind of that hunger to just succeed and do better.
Yeah, sometimes I've been asked by successful entrepreneurs, how do they get their kids to have hunger? How do they get them to want to make sales and do business? All they want to do is play video games and have fun, which is, it's okay. There's a time for that, but you do want to instill that hunger. Mine didn't come because my dad was that creative and created an artificial need system. No, it was the reality. It was not having toys. It was seeing that other kids bought lunch at school and I just had to pack rice, beans, chicken every day, or a sandwich. I wanted to have a few dollars to buy lunch, and it didn't take much in the 1980s. I just needed $1 or $2, but my parents never gave me money. And I wanted to have those toys that I didn't have. For years, I had a yellow wiffle ball bat, and 3 wiffle balls. And that's what I played with literally for years until, I could, first of all, we didn't stay in poverty forever, but we stayed underclass for sure. So, but that was a blessing for me. And that's what created that instinct to want to make money. In 4th grade was my first experience as what we now know as entrepreneurship. I had no idea what that was. I bought these trading cards called Garbage Pail Kids.
I remember those vividly.
Remember? They made fun of the Cabbage Patch dolls. And if you broke it down from my memory, they were 5 cents a card when you bought the pack and opened them up. And I bought them at the corner store by my grandma's house, and they didn't have them where I went to school and where I lived. So I took them on Monday morning and I showed them, and the kids went nuts. And these are the kids whose parents gave them money. So they had the money to buy them off me. I just didn't have it. And so I started selling them. And I remember thinking, these cost 5 cents. This is one of the best lessons in school is 25-cent pack divided by 5 equals 5 cents. So I knew the cost. And I said, if I can sell them for 10 cents, I'll be doing pretty good. And I did that. And the next weekend, I took all that money and I bought more packs on Sunday at my grandma's house. And I took them back to the school. And now I learned something new. I'll never forget the moment where I learned supply and demand. I had this card called Fat Matt. And everybody thought it was hilarious and they wanted to buy it. So the price kept going up. And I ended up selling it for $1. And that was for me one of the biggest wins of my life. I could buy lunch. I didn't have to eat the boring lunch my parents gave me. Or I got to go after school. This is the 80s. School would end and kids could do whatever they want. We'd walk across the street to a shopping center, elementary kids, and buy donuts and all this stuff. So I could do those things at the other
Finally,
kids.
right?
So that's how it started.
We have real similar beginning. Mine was in Garbage Pail Kids. Mine was pica. We used to go down. Pica Limon is down in Mexico. Used to buy this Mexican candy, and I would buy it at around 5 cents and sell it for 20 cents at school.
Nice.
So it was like multiplier 4x, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
that was your early beginning.
Yes, it got me into the hustle. Same kind of thing.
Yep.
Like we pack lunch, soggy lunch every day, and it's like kids were buying lunch and just not fitting in. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So most of the people, at least a lot of the entrepreneurs that I talk to, usually form these habits when they're like the pivotal ages are like 14 to 18, where they're either in sports or humble beginnings. But you had it way before then. You started off just, hey, I'm hungry.
Yeah.
Okay,
Out of necessity. Yeah. And then it just kept developing. It was one thing after the other. The school banned those cards. I was the only one selling them. This is before the internet. So if you knew where to buy them, you knew, and you didn't tell anybody. So they banned them because they were grotesque. So then I went and bought these. They had these little toys called muscles, and they were little wrestling men made out of like a rubbery clay type thing. I bought those and I sold them. And then those didn't do so well. So I kind of went dormant for a few years, but I really picked it up in high school. I had a friend who had a Costco membership, their family. We didn't. And I would go with that friend like twice a month, and we'd go to Costco and buy a ton. It was all mine, but I got in with their membership. And I bought a ton of chocolates. And I remember the math. My average cost was 24 cents a bar back then. And I'd sell them 2 for $1 because the vending machines in my high school were 60 cents. And it got to the point where I had to go underground and hide my bags because they said I was killing the sales of the vending machine. And I know I was, because I was netting about $30 a day in the early to mid 90s. Not bad.
No, it's great, especially for a kid.
Yeah. I had a part-time job making $4.25 an hour every day after school, except for baseball season. And I made way more.
So that wiffle ball bat paid off.
It paid off. I played varsity for 4 years. But I made more money in my $30 a day net of chocolates than I did 3, 4, 5 hours after school every day working a dumb part-time job.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you brought up another thing. I was going to talk about this later, but it's a great segue. Is you talked about like creating this atmosphere to have your kids be resilient and at a young age. And how do you teach that? So I know why you have it and why you're disciplined and your hunger to do it. But how did you install that in your kids? Because at this point, way fast forward later, man, you're running businesses, you're successful, you're married, you're in the middle of the hustle. I'm curious for even myself, how do you install that in your children? Because my kids can take it or leave it. I have one that probably may follow me, but majority of them are like no ambitions.
Yeah. I was honored one day because I never had a talk about building strong and independent children or anything, but I guess people notice. And I had a friend, he's exited for over 75 million in different businesses. And he had me come talk to his 8-person forum of successful entrepreneurs. And first they introduced themselves and went around and told me their exit amounts. No one there had a bad day, it seemed like, right? And they all had sold for a lot, some 100 million. So excellent sales. And they had brought me there. They told me in advance, they said, would you come in and talk about how to build strong and independent children? I said, why would you want me to do that? And he goes, because we've been watching your kids and we see what you've done. So I gave this talk. Unfortunately, when it was over, a few of them said, this was phenomenal. I wish I would have heard it 30 years ago. These guys are in their 60s. And they said they have their kids on the payroll, some of them, and they don't do anything. So 30 years old, and the kid still hasn't accomplished anything. So I shared in there multiple points on how I've gotten my kids to do it.
And what are the key points? Can you just talk about a couple of those real quick?
Yeah, no inheritance. Millions will be left to charity. You're not getting a penny. That's what I tell them. Whether that's what's going to happen or not is irrelevant, but that's what they've grown up believing. So my son Ryan, he's 21 years old. He's in the Army, combat medic. He, before he graduated high school, had $30,000 in the bank. And by the way, he was paying $200 a month rent. That was my gift to all my kids at 18 years old, is an invoice, and you will pay $200 a month rent per month. I don't do this to be mean. I don't need their money. I don't have a mortgage. I don't have bills. But I want them to feel what I felt, and I've done that artificially.
I've heard that from a few different partners and people in life. I love that philosophy. Teach them that responsibility.
Yeah, and they take it. I thought at first, we'll see how it goes. However, I told them this since they were 5 years old. I said, when you're a man, you're going to pay at 18. You're going to pay this. Now, my son turned 18 at boot camp in Oklahoma, so he wrote a letter, and he was coming back because he was a reservist the first 3 years. Now he's active duty, but he said, when I get back, do I have to pay you for this month? As I turned 18, but I'm here. I go, no, that one you don't. We'll start on the next month. So he was the exception to it.
No, second question, I want you to finish this thought. Buy-in from your wife is important. How'd your wife feel about this?
Yeah. So fortunately, she's a pretty traditional woman in that sense. But I did have some pushback because she has a bigger heart than I do. And she sees the immediate feelings that it gives her to help a child. She was a nurse for many years. She was a registered nurse.
Just natural, maternal.
So she wants to help and all that. But I've shown to her through examples that I've seen in life that if you help too much in the beginning, you're going to only harm them. So all you're doing in the beginning is helping yourself by feeling good. I'm going to hurt us a little bit. It hurts. I'll give you an example. My second son, $14,000 in the bank, still in high school, bought his first car, cash, used, $9,300 car. And it broke down pretty quickly. And man, he's a good kid and he works hard. He's an ultra marathon runner. He's a tough kid and he trains a lot and works. But I wanted to go out. I almost wanted to buy a car for him. It was an instinct that I had to go, poor kid, he's struggled and that car is destroyed now. And I mentioned it to my wife, and thank God she brought me back. She goes, wait, no, that's not what we do. And I sold him one of my cars for a couple thousand less than it was worth, but he had to pay it, and he did. So yeah, I've got the buy-in from my wife. It's been years. We're on we have 4 kids, so we've really built that. But it's explaining to your partner, in this case, my wife, that this is for the long term and showing examples of people who had it rough. And I tell her and me, look how we've had it and look where we've gotten and look at the people we know who were handed everything. In the end, I don't think they're as grateful and as happy anyway.
Yeah, no, I love that, man. You got my mind racing. I almost feel like a call out. My kids for Christmas this year, like I remember making a list. They wanted nothing. They're like, I don't even know what we want. And it was kind of like, and at that point I got this out of body experience. They do chores and we make them pay for stuff and that kind of, but they don't have the same hustle. I feel like they rather, like we have a soccer field in our backyard. They don't go play soccer. It's too hot and we make them do activities. We limit their electronics, but I just don't know how to install that kind of drive.
I think here's my idea. It's what's worked for me. There's 2 things that we did. At 5 years old, every one of our kids has gotten a chocolate box, a box of chocolates. I followed what worked for me, but I don't give it to them. I say, this is for you. You want to go sell it? You're going to be rich. Here's what it costs. When they sell it, I showed them, we do the math, we do a P&L on a simple basis. And we go, you just got $100 for this box because you maybe sold them for 80, you got 20 in tips. So you just made $100. The box costs $32. You got to pay me the 32. Do you want to order more? And we do that. And that's all of our kids really have made the majority of their money in their childhood. So we give them the way of making the money. So we instill that early. And then, oh, by the way, when we sat around when they were younger and all of them would be home at the same time, we'd have dinner. We celebrated a lot of that. Like, how'd you do today? Who sold the most today at school? And where are you at? Let's see what you got in the bank. And I would open up my P&Ls and show them things. Maybe they didn't understand all of it, but they saw, oh, that's what you sold. That's what it costs. So we let them understand that at a young age, and then we create the necessity.
So you're teaching them gap accounting principles at 5 years old.
They're so slow. They don't get it all the time. The other thing is, I'll give you an example of how it's paid off. My son, Ryan, who's a grown man now, he was 12 years old and we were in Puerto Rico. We were exploring for moving there for Act 20 for tax reasons. And we left the Airbnb and walked down to the beach in San Juan, and he forgot his sandals and he didn't realize he was wearing tennis shoes until we got to the sand. And he goes, oh, I don't want to walk in my tennis shoes. And my wife said, look, there's a shop right there, $10 sandals, go buy some. He was 12 years old. He probably had $10,000 in the bank. And he said, $10? No, I'll stick to my tennis shoes. So because we make everything, it's their expense. You want to go out with your friends to that trampoline park? You've got tens of thousands in the bank. Go ahead and pay for it.
Yeah.
And so now they decide very carefully the things they want to do. And what I've noticed is they don't waste money and they respect it.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, it's kind of hard as that, like especially from humble beginnings, because I grew up with nothing. My problem is I think my wife from Scottsdale grew up in horses and dressage and hunter jumper and different world, right? Versus me, like, am I going to eat tonight, or if I'm going to eat the same thing every day for a month? And if I get something switched up, it's a luxury, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting trying to merge those two lives together, you know.
Yeah.
So I feel like the buy-in, and you're going to challenge me on that. Thank you. I love being challenged. Okay, so out of candy, selling in school, out of high school. Let's talk about like your first like real business. What did that look like?
Right after high school, or during high school, once I got a car, I would go to garage sales very regularly, looking for stuff that I could buy and take to the flea market. One time I found cologne samples. Maybe they fell off a truck. I didn't ask questions, but I bought them cheap. I got them for $5 each. And this is back in the 90s. I had Dracar and all these other cool brands from back then. And I'd sell them. I started taking them to the flea market. I sold them for $30. These are $60 bottles. Sold them for $30. I made $25 a bottle. But that ran out. So many things were just temporary. I never got a supplier. It was always like, I found this thing and you got to keep hunting.
Quick hustles.
Yeah, quick hustles. And that's what I thought business would be for me, because poor parents, poor neighborhood. The richest person in my neighborhood was a school teacher, because my dad would always say, that guy's a school teacher. He makes good money. It's like 30 grand back then. And so I got lucky, I guess. People tell me I get lucky, but I was on the hunt all the time. I found a garage sale selling jockey underwear. They were brand new in the pack in a nice neighborhood. And the guy had jockey tablecloths, jockey flags. And I asked him, it's this Mexican-American guy named Ignacio. He's passed away since then, but great guy. And he said, these are my samples. These are my leftovers. I sell to Macy's, JCPenney. I have all these samples and I'm stuck with them every 6 months. And I said, how many you got? Counted them up, 500 of them. He wanted $3 a piece. I talked him down to $1. And he said something that was really powerful to me, because maybe I was 19 or 20. And he said, what do you do? What are you doing? I said, I buy things. I take it to the flea market. I try to make money. And he saw my little crappy 1990 Dodge Colt that I had. And he said, I like what you're doing.
And a Colt too.
Really?
Yeah.
Those are very reliable, good little car. So the guy said something that was very impactful to me, not only at the moment, but as a father, it really impacted me. And this is a guy I looked up to. He had a beautiful house in a nice neighborhood. He was a professional person, never hung around with people like that. And he said, I have a son your age, and he's inside playing Nintendo. And I've told him that if he just stands here, he can keep all the money. And he doesn't want to do it. And here you are at his age, and you're coming here hustling and buying and taking a risk, and you're going to go to the flea market now. And I said, man, okay, that made me feel really good. Like I'm doing the right thing. I got to keep hustling. And that day, I bought $500 roughly in underwear, took it to the flea market and turned in about $3,000. And every 6 months, he'd call me and say, Joel, I've got 2,500 pieces. And we kept doing that. But now it started becoming a business, because at least I had a temporary supplier every 6 months. But a friend said, hey, instead of all these flea markets, why don't you try this new thing called eBay? So July of 99, I opened my eBay account. And now I wasn't getting $6 a pair. I was getting $10, $12 a pair, because these were $15 in the store. And sales, I started learning, sales would spike when it would snow in the winter to those places.
So you actually figured seasonality.
Yeah. Because I go, they don't want to go out to a store. It's snowing and they need underwear. And they're buying 5 pairs from me at $12, $15. It was eBay, so it bid up. And then I started importing a brand from Mexico that had almost no sales in the U.S. And I started bringing them in. Within a few years, I was buying over $1 million a year from them.
Oh, wow. I
became by far their biggest customer, and started growing that. And the guy in Mexico gave me a good tip. He said, rather than you just buying and putting this stuff on eBay, why don't you do more? And he really was like my rich dad, poor dad. He was that rich dad that I didn't have. And he gave me a lot of good advice. And he said, why don't you go to trade shows? I'll give you an even better price. Start selling to stores in the U.S.
So you got a supply chain.
Yeah, now it was consistent. It was the first time in my life I could place an order. Like, yeah, I want this. I want 100 of these, 200 of these. I never was able to do that. And that changed everything. We started selling millions of dollars.
Wow. So this is crazy. And I've done a lot of e-tail and retail as well. I actually come from retail. It's a different kind of stress. I think it prepared me for everything else in life. But the first thing is getting it in the stores. So that's huge. Can you talk about two things? First, your first supply chain relationship, as far as like whether it's a big box or small company, and the second thing, I know for me, what was huge is the first reorder. That let me know that I'm a real business.
Prove the concept.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I remember that it was early 2000s, maybe 2002, 2003, around there. I went to a trade show in Las Vegas called the Magic Trade Show. It's a big clothing, one of the biggest in the world. And It was rough because I paid 5,000 for the spot and I maybe had 5,000 in sales. And I remember being frustrated because I just sold to some small shops and that was good, but oh well, what am I going to do? That didn't work out. And then the next month they ordered again. And that's when I said, oh, that's where the money's made. I didn't make it in the spot. I was used to buying stuff, take it to the flea market,
Quick
you get your
fix.
money back.
Yeah.
But now I said, I've got relationships now with these people. This isn't strangers that walk by in front of me and buy. These guys are now reordering every month. Oh, I better step it up and use some of the things I've learned, like How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. So I started writing handwritten notes, appreciating them, sending them Starbucks cards, learning more about them. So every 6 months I'd see them at the trade shows and I'd say, so what are your hobbies? And I started just learning about them as much as I could. And I started seeing the results. Like they would keep buying from me. They would start telling me bad things about my competitors, which allowed me to then say, oh, there's a green flag. What is it that you don't like? Oh, they don't deliver on time. Well, what are your best sellers from them? And they'd send me the samples. I'd go manufacture very similar pieces because it's clothing. I can make this, you can make that. And that allowed me to get to different levels within that. And by the way, by building those relationships, 13 of the 14 businesses I bought were not for sale. They were these guys, the people I sold to for so many years, e-commerce websites that did well. I bought their businesses and was able to go direct to consumer. So it all came from learning how to sell to them, building good relationships and seeing what happens.
I love that, man. I love the humble beginnings. So a lot of times, like for me in businesses, and this is one of my challenges and pain points growing, and this is my journey, is that I kept my circle of friends. Like I remember, I would get to certain levels, and I didn't have anyone around me that has been that successful before. And then every time I get to these new levels, I need a new proximity, right? I need a new influencers. Talk about that kind of struggle because I like you, I feel like you just figure it out. There's a lot of costly mistakes in figuring it out, right? So talk about that growth and that challenges. Who are your mentors? How did you find these new circles of friends, or were you kind of one of those anomalies? I just did it yourself. And
Yeah, I wish that early on I would have understood about mentorship and had someone to talk to other than like Beto. Beto was the drug dealer down the street who was like the most successful guy illegitimately,
yeah.
aside from the school teacher down the street who had a decent job. So I didn't have that. I didn't have that. It was lonely, man. The things I've talked about so far, selling on the flea markets, eBay, selling even online in the beginning. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know but then I look back and there were little moments. I learned how to sell in the flea markets from my uncle Jorge. So he would sell at the flea market. So that was that got me to selling in the flea markets. A friend said, why don't you try eBay? And then I sold on eBay. The rich dad that I had from Mexico who owned the brand and the factory, he told me, why don't you do trade shows? And then we talked a lot about things and he gave me different perspectives of seeing things more positively and that sort of thing. I had an ex-girlfriend in California and her stepdad invited me to go see his operation. It was the biggest business I'd ever walked into. He had like 100 and something employees or manufacturing. And so it's those little moments where I go, oh, this is what's possible. Maybe I can do it too. He puts his pants on one leg at a time. I do that, maybe. So it wasn't someone taking me by the hand early on and guiding me step by step, but it was just seeing what other people are doing and trying to mimic the good behavior. But it wasn't enough. I made a ton of mistakes. I lost millions of dollars. Real estate crash and I had multiple houses. I didn't have anybody telling me, here's how you should do it. Invest for cash flow. I just thought, no, the prices will go up forever. If I ever get in trouble, I'll sell one. Yeah. Well, when it all crashes, it was really bad. So yeah.
And you don't have tenants and now you don't have the recurring revenue and then bad tenants and you're putting money in, you don't have the money to put in. It's
a lot of problems like that. So now I've learned, and years ago, 11 or 12 years ago, I became a member in EO, Entrepreneurs Organization. And that was my first time sitting in a room with guys that, oh, you've gone through that and I can share. I can actually help you with that. Or I'm going through something, I can share it with them and they're able to help me. So that for me was the biggest thing. So yeah, friendships. The average friend wasn't able to help me in business and wasn't able to help me think that way. I think entrepreneurship is such a lonely place that we need.
In a lot of ways it is, yeah.
Yeah, we need those organizations. You can't tell your friends that if you go to a W-2 party, right, where everybody's a worker, you can't go there and tell them your successes because you sound like you're bragging. And if you tell them about your failures, they don't care. So you just look weird. But when you get a group of entrepreneurs together and you say successes, everybody's happy for you. And when you say your failures, they can support you.
Or even some of your failures. Like you start talking about losing millions. I talk about losing millions. People are like, oh, he's bragging. I'm like, no, it's painful today. You know what I mean? It's like I had some sort of litigation thing, or I have like I've been sued for something, and I'm busy, but I got to go to court for this thing. People don't understand that, and they take it as bragging too. But you're just fishing for someone to connect to.
Yeah. And by the way, when I lost millions, I got to the point where I was worth negative cash flow.
Let's talk about that, because I feel like a lot of times people think the people owning the businesses are always making money. Like there's times like even with some of my companies now, because we're growing, I'm not taking a paycheck. I'm reinvesting 100% back in. Oh, yeah. Right. And they don't understand that, they always think that you're making money. Let's talk about that.
Oh, yeah.
So you have a company, you have a wife, you have kids, back against the wall, and now you're negative. What do those times look like? How and let's talk about that, and then kind of talk about climbing out of that.
Ugh. Man, there was a moment that was one of the darkest moments. I had a few of those dark moments. One was we had a little kid. He was 17 months old. We only had one kid. And my wife was pregnant with our second kid. And she was working as a registered nurse, overnight shifts, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, 36 hours a week.
12-hour shifts, yeah.
Yeah, and I was trying to get things going. Well, that's when real estate crashed. I mean, completely crashed.
2008?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So we went into a big problem where I ran out of money. I literally could not pay. All these properties were empty, and I was trying to do the right thing, and I still paid my mortgage. I paid my HOA. I paid my taxes on empty properties that I couldn't rent, and I couldn't sell them. And at the time, and I keep a real estate license, I made sure all the time, okay, I'm the cheapest price in the building. I have the highest commission for rent and for sale. Nobody was buying. Nobody was renting. It was a scary, scary time. Many sleepless nights. I look back because I hear people, oh, I've been stressed out. I haven't been sleeping well. I mean, you don't know what not sleeping well is, man, when you're sleeping 2 hours a night for months and months. Now, I had this little side gig. The underwear thing was kind of starting to get going. So fortunately, it didn't last too long. Yes, I lost everything on that real estate side, and that's where I put all my eggs.
So let's talk about that, because now you have no credit. And the same thing happened to me. I had to let go because I got into the same thing, but I got laid off. And it's not like now where I can dig into my piggy bank and now I own the properties or I do different things, right? It's different. I'm leveraged, right? And then, but let's talk about that, because now all of a sudden, entrepreneur, you got this thing going. If you let things go, your credit goes to hell in the handbasket.
Oh, it had to go to hell.
Yeah,
it had to. It went
so now you got this business and no money and no credit.
Yeah. So here's how that worked out. So I always had a 800 plus credit score. So did my wife. I'd never even paid interest other than real estate. I hadn't financed cars. I hadn't bought stuff. I just bought stuff, paid it off, right? And my down payments on these 6 properties were 20 to 33%. I thought I was being responsible. I heard of everybody buying with 3% down. I didn't do that.
Or stated income or doing.
Yeah, I was putting good money down, and I thought I'll be safe because I've got a buffer. I've got a good down payment. But when things crash way beyond that, you go to zero. So let's see. I did not have credit. My credit probably went to 500 and something, but I didn't need. Fortunately, I live very much below my means. I always got made fun of by all my friends. Like, dude, you're making money. Why don't you live it up? I just don't. Me personally, I don't find gratitude in it. I don't own jewelry. I don't have anything. I'm a simple guy. And that helped because the dollar I made on this underwear sale, I turned it into 2, and that turned into 4, and that turned into 8. So I didn't have to borrow money. I just needed to keep reordering, and that's it. But I was moving stuff quickly on a small scale, very small scale, but maybe I was making $6,000 a month net profit, maybe, right? I was doing it out of my house. I had no employees.
But between that and your wife, you guys are probably okay.
And she was working as a nurse, but we had a mortgage, and we had gotten in trouble with all those properties. And the worst part was the following year when the banks, I don't know how to word this properly, but when the banks took the hit for me not paying my mortgage, I got a tax bill because I got like a 1099 from I don't know if you're familiar with this, but I got on every property, I got 1099s from the bank. So whatever they took as a hit, I had to report as income. So that following year, I had this huge income that wasn't my income.
They didn't do that with me.
Oh, you got lucky, man. I paid a bunch of taxes that following year. So like add insult to injury. I just lost all my properties. I lost all those down payments that I had put down, hundreds of thousands. And now I got to pay a tax bill for the banks who got bailed out, but I had to do that. So anyway, little by little, scraping by and just one little thing after another, I said, if I do okay with this Mexican brand that I'm importing, maybe I just need a second brand. And I brought a brand from Colombia, and that worked out pretty well. And then I brought another one. So I kept doing that. And you know what? I looked for opportunities. I remember being at a trade show, and maybe hunger is what causes your radar to be open. Sometimes I'll do a fast, 24, 48, 72 hours. And when you do that, man, you are hyper aware. You hear and see better than normal because you're looking for food, your brain turns on, right? So because I was in that hyper aware state of necessity, I was at a trade show. It was my second trade show ever. And I had a lot of needs. I needed to make money. And the guys next to me saw how many appointments I had. It was a competitor right next door. Total coincidence, they were out of Hialeah, Florida, 20 minutes from where I live, and we were just neighbors in Las Vegas. And they said, you have a lot of appointments. You have a lot of clients. My first trade show, I didn't. I learned you have to make a lot of phone calls to get clients to come in. And I didn't tell them that part. I just said, yeah, I've been doing this a couple times, and I've built some relationships. And they said, do you think you can help us out? And I said, do you want me to help sell some of your stuff? Yep. Can you give me 20% commission? Yep. So next show, 6 months later, I had all my appointments, and every one of my appointments agreed, as soon as we're done, I'm going to walk you next door. And we made sure we were next to each other. And I made thousands of dollars from that. But now the reorders kept coming in, right? So I just kept looking for opportunities like that. Like, what else can I do that's outside the box? Let me work with my competitor while I need him so that I can make a few extra $1,000 every month.
Right. I love that, man. I love the story. I love the humble beginnings. I love the quick cash, the quick money thing, to reoccurring revenue models, to the growth. So who do you attribute today? Was it 12 years ago when you started getting into these EO groups where you feel like you just got a mass of different teachers that you can go shoulder to shoulder with? Is that would you credit that to your best teachers, or who would you credit your best teacher in business?
That was the beginning, because I met a neighbor, very successful. He was in YPO, and I told him, I want to get into YPO. And he says, we have presidents of companies. It wouldn't be your thing. You're an entrepreneur. You should look at EO. So that was when I got into that. And yeah, from there, not only the people I've met in there, but then their friends who I've met, that just opened up my mind. Look, I really seriously believe, I know it's cliche, but it's all here. It's all in our head. I'm the same person maybe that I was back then, but now my way of seeing things is different. And that's it. I hear the same information that before I may have said, oh, it's not going to work. Now I go, that might work because my friend, he did something similar, right? So just from learning from friends' experiences, I think opens up a whole world.
Is that why? Because you do a lot of coaching and teaching now. Like, is your passion because of where do you have that pay it forward mentality? Because that kind of philanthropy. I always like the fact. I love this phrase, and I think you're like this. Is money just doesn't change who you are; it amplifies.
It's a magnifying glass.
Yes. So and so I feel like this part of your paying it forward has been wherever it's an intrinsic part of who you are. Is that why? Why do you mentor so many guys? Because now you're successful, you've done it, you've been there, you've done that, you can do it again, you can replicate. So what's that passion and pay it forward?
Yeah, I think there's a trend in my life that when I didn't have something, I want to have it and I want to provide it to others. So one example, when I came to this country as a kid from Cuba, I didn't speak English. So I got put in school 3 months later. And of course I failed the year and I had to repeat. And then I still didn't speak good English that next year. But 2 years later, my English got okay. It wasn't great. I had very broken English. I always got made fun of, but I was able to communicate. And I still have this picture in my house. I won friendliest in the school. And it was because now I could speak, and I know what those kids felt like when they come to the school and nobody would speak to them, because nobody spoke to me for the first couple of years. So yeah, super proud. One of my proudest moments to win friendliest in the school. Same thing. I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have anybody just giving me the guidance of asking me the right question, because the answer might be in here. I just needed to be asked, and no one asked me. So now I get to do that. And the way that started, and I built a coaching business now, was on accident. Once I hit 7 figures in net profit and EBITDA in my first business, I said, I'm doing pretty good and I only spend a small portion of that. So I'm going to take it easy. I'm going to start volunteering, and and I volunteered for every startup and accelerator, incubators. And I loved it because I got to see that, wow, that was an easy solution I just gave them. It wasn't even hard. It was hard for them. It would have been hard for me 10 years prior.
And it probably collapsed timeframes, because for them, they would have took them years or decades, if at all, to learn probably what you gave them, that little gem.
And I thought it was easy because I'm smart, because I've lived it.
Done it.
I've been an entrepreneur since 4th grade. I've gone through stuff, all kinds of stuff. So I always tell my kids, look, I'm 50 years old. And yeah, for you guys, that's old. But think of it as like 100, because it's been with my eyes open and in the real world. I wasn't sheltered. I wasn't in a bubble. I was living for all these years, especially as a little kid trying to figure stuff out. So I feel bad. I want people to succeed. I want everybody around me. I want every one of my friends to be a multimillionaire if that's what they want. Same. I want them to have more time with their kids if that's what they want. I want everybody to have everything. So when I got into these incubators and startups, I got to volunteer and help, and I saw some benefits. And then something happened. The magic thing that happens to a poor entrepreneur kid is that someone said, I actually want to pay you to be my coach. And I said, no, I do this volunteer. I don't want any money. And they said, if I don't pay you, I'm not going to listen and take the advice as well. So could I pay you? And I said, all right, let's give it a shot. And that was years ago. I became a coach. And from there, I've built a business around it. But it didn't start with the intention of it being a business or making any money at all.
Yeah, I think I'm at that point right now. I've been offered, I've been whatever, but I think for me, it's like, because it is the generosity. I think when I give solutions or we do partner, they understand where my heart's at. So it's an interesting
That's good.
dichotomy of like where that is. Cause I always struggle with that.
Yeah.
Like, does money change the relationship? And the answer is yes. But like, just like what you said, full circle about your kids, maybe the respect and the different things and earning it will mean something more if they actually do pay. We're great philosophy. So I want to get in mainly for time's sake, because I feel like I can just talk to you forever. Discuss more about your book in your 31 Daily Challenges. Is that from the mentorship? Is it like what triggered you to make this book? And then two, give me some success stories of how it's changed and you've seen people's life just transform from following daily disciplines.
Yeah. First off, I'm the world's worst salesman. And I know this because when the guys in my men's group are around me, and I tell a stranger who's with us about it, they always go, that was a horrible way of explaining it, because they are the ones who are the living examples of how it's changed their life, their marriage, their health, all these things. So here's what happened. A friend in EO said to me, hey, I read this challenge book and I did it and it was pretty good. You should try it. I did it on my own. Great. I loved it. And I reached out to the author and I said, I really enjoyed this. I didn't get a reply back. A couple of years later, I did the book again. And again, I reached out to the author because the second time that I did it, I brought a bunch of guys. It was probably 25, 30 of us, and we all did it together. And they could have been anywhere in the country. There were people I'd mentored. There was no cost. I didn't charge anybody. I just said, go buy this book. Let's do it. And so I said, well, what happened is the class ended. We did the 31 days. And some of the guys said, let's do it again. And I go, maybe in a year we'll do it all over again. And then they said those magic words to a poor kid. They said, we'll pay you to do it again. I go, to do this? To run the WhatsApp group, do a weekly Zoom, and this, you'll pay me? Yeah. I go, oh, there's a business here. Okay, let's try it. So we started it up. We called it Class 002. We didn't have a name for the first one. And that's how we got going. Again, I wrote to the author of that book and I said, here's what I'm doing. I'm starting to form groups now. I think I could really grow this. Would you be interested? I emailed them, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, website. I did everything and I kept trying. No response. So I go, okay, we'll just do this on our own. By the fifth class, I wrote my own book in my language because the other one was, written in his style. But that's where I got the idea from. We all get ideas from somewhere else, right? So I did it. I made it to my taste and my liking. And now what we do is guys run 31 days with me in a course. And we'll send them my book when they sign up. And every day you read one chapter, and it's 3 to 5 minutes. That's about my attention span. So they'll read it. It tells them a quick story of why this is important. And then we have 2 exercises, a physical one and a mental one. Maybe you got to do 100 push-ups a day, spread out over the day. But you also have to do this other thing. Maybe it's apologize to somebody in your past. And you got to have somebody you got to apologize to, right? Or maybe today you got to handwrite a note and put it in the mail. It's always a different mental challenge. And we do that. And when I average about 18 to 25 guys per class, we've now done 33 classes on my first book, 8 classes on my second book, and we fill them up pretty good. And then at the end of it, I invite a couple of guys to invite them to apply to my brotherhood. And that's where I got 121 men, all superstars, doing really well in life. And now with that group in the brotherhood, what I do is every week I bring speakers. So I might bring a doctor about men's health. I might bring a psychologist or somebody about marriage counseling and things that are helpful to men, right? Everything you can imagine. We bring authors because we do a Book of the Month club, and we've brought a lot of really good authors to talk to them. And we do retreats. Last year we went to Bolivia. This year Argentina. Next year Machu Picchu. We do big hiking retreats. A big retreat down here in South Florida. So yeah, that's how it's all evolved. On accident over the last 3.5 years.
I love that organic stuff. Means it's perfect because it's God's plan, right?
Yeah.
So I want to talk about a couple other things, and then I wanted some shameless plugs. So I always love this, asking entrepreneurs, what's the most expensive lesson you've had as an entrepreneur?
I guess it's probably to not invest in, not from I have so many from the business, but not investing with the money you make, not investing in things that I didn't understand properly. For me, real estate, I thought I was investing for the ongoing valuation, 2005, 6, 7. And instead, I should have been investing for cash flow, because then I would have been fine on all these. If cash flowing properly from day one, I would have been fine. Another one is to not get into things that I know nothing about. I had a lot of success in men's apparel. And then I started getting a little cocky and thinking I had the Midas touch. So I should buy a women's apparel company, and I should import this much, and I should do this. And I've lost 7 figures in women's apparel. Never made a profit, I don't think, in women. So for me, it was better to keep acquiring and getting more vertical, from the manufacturing all the way to the end consumer and owning their data, compared to what I was doing, which was like, oh, let me start over because, I'm pretty good at this stuff. And that's where I lost a lot of money.
Okay. And then the other thing that's important to my heart, and so my wife and I always say, treat her like I'm still courting her. So we still do date nights, we still do everything else, regardless of the success or the travel or everything else. Make her a priority, right? Don't act like I have her. That's what I tell men. And if treat her like you're still courting her. But how did you maintain that work-life balance? Because and I love the phrase, if you're an entrepreneur, the balance is kind of like a theory at best sometimes. But you seem to have a real healthy relationship with your children and your wife. And how did you maintain that?
Yeah. So I'll say that probably the first 7 years, it wasn't that great. It was average, maybe. And if we would have remained average, it'd probably be well below average, and maybe we'd be divorced today. But we made a real conscious effort. First of all, I was super attracted to her from day one. Mentally, physically, I still am. We're best friends. But I think it's taking into consideration the other person. So I started stop being selfish and seeing everything from my perspective and understanding, well, why are you doing that? Why do you think that way? And being good that way, I think, to any other person. You want to be a good person. You want to see it from their point of view. For me, I don't know. It's now just part of our nature. We're together all the time. When I leave here, I'm going to go to lunch with her, right? We're always together and we get along. I think I appreciate the way she is. She's easygoing, and she's
I think for someone like us, we need someone easygoing.
Yeah. We were at this retreat with 16 couples from all around the world in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, up in the mountains. And they did these personality tests before we got there. And then they flashed them up on the wall. And they said, after a day or two, what couple do you guys think this is? And one side was red, fire, aggressive, hot. And the other one was calm, blue, peaceful. And people were looking around and they guessed that maybe it was us. And they started agreeing. Maybe it's Joel and Jessica. And they go, yep, that's them. I'm 100 miles an hour. I'm pretty calm right now because I'm sitting in a chair, but she is the easiest thing in the world. So that's helped. But I'll say this. I had a friend, when I first got married, he told me he was dating a girl and she was kind of giving him a little bit of trouble. And I said, you got to be careful, man. At least for me, I like a girl who goes along with me, right? Who's a little more passive. And he goes, no, not me. I want that fiery challenge. Well, she took off with somebody else after they've been married and had kids and all that. So, and that's, maybe he deserved it, but I didn't want that. I wanted somebody who goes along. Now, super bright. She's very intelligent, college educated, and all of that. But for me, I needed somebody who goes along with the plan. Now, you have to be a salesman at the same time in your marriage, not just in your business. When you said, when you're going through that challenge, if you're really busy, I had to sell it to my wife. I had to tell her, hey, look, for the next 3 months, we probably will not go out to eat. This is when we were young and really grinding. We're going to put our head down. If you could pick up an extra shift at the hospital, do it. I'm going to be working 16 hours a day. We're only going to do this until this date. Let's put it on the calendar. This is a sprint. We're going to grind really, really hard. And we did it. And then we'd celebrate and do something. And also, she wasn't materialistic, so I didn't have to go all out and buy her a $20,000 ring or purse. It was just like, all right, let's celebrate. Let's do a little weekend away or something like that. So I think we have to be salesmen. And what you said earlier about you don't have her, you could lose her just the same. Keep treating her average, and then she's going to look around and see that her friend's husband treats him better, right? Treats that friend better. And then she's going to start thinking negatively of you. And then you're not getting what you wanted out of life. And you're saying, I don't know, she's not affectionate anymore. She doesn't give me this. She doesn't give me that. Look first inside yourself and see what you're not giving her that makes her not want to give you what you want.
I have a philosophy, a spiritual axiom. If I'm not the problem, there is no solution. I always got to look inward first. Not to say that outside circumstances, things don't happen, but I need to start here.
Absolutely. And when you do that and you conquer that, it's so powerful because you're no longer a victim. Yeah. You're the reason. You could fix it. I agree. I look first to see what did I do wrong, and maybe I can make it a little bit better.
Yep. And if not, then there's also another philosophy. Say I'm in business. When the horse is dead, dismount. I'll drag it for a little bit, but I get tired real quick.
Right.
No, I love that. Now, I want to talk about two more things. First thing is, I want to talk about your exit because I know for me, like the first company that I sold got a nice little check, and then whatever, it's that exhilarating moment, like you kind of feel like you've made it, And I had another one recently, like 2 years ago, what didn't happen because of legislation and whatnot. But just talk about that moment, just kind of like, and I know like you get to this peak, and the second question on top of that. Because for me, every time I've had situational depression in my life, it's usually because I don't have a title. And it sounds like you did a great job in reinventing yourself and mentoring and coaching and finding other ways to keep yourself busy. But first, let's talk about that moment. Like check written, LOA is done, they've done the forensics, checks written, that piece, that kind of especially coming from where you come from. And then secondly, that kind of moment of transitioning into what's next.
So for me, it was very different. So I have a friend, he was one of my mentors. He started the art of shaving. The big stores sold it to Procter and Gamble, and him and another friend who sold a company for 100 million. They were bicycle accessories, and sold it to Schwinn Bicycle. And I've asked people just to get the perspective to figure out what worked, what didn't for people. And this is before I sold. And what I learned from that was that for me, it wasn't a big shock when I sold because I'd been making good money for a good amount of time, making seven figures in net without profit, without debt or without partners. So it was making money for a lot of decades there. So that was good. The other thing is I wasn't in the day-to-day for the last probably 6 years before I sold the company.
Business owner versus business operator.
Yeah, so I read that Robert Kiyosaki, that quadrant one, the 4 quadrants, and I realized I'm not an employee, I'm not a solopreneur, I'm not even an entrepreneur anymore. I just managed that investment with a daily call to my vice president who was running everything, and I did that for the last several years. So I already became detached. The other thing is I don't care about apparel, and I had an apparel company. In fact, I sold underwear to men. I do not care about underwear for men at all. I had no passion for it. So I was emotionally detached for years. And I'd already started doing other things. And when I found that real career, my real calling in life to help men and coach and run this group, I realized that's what I want to do. So when I finished and it exited the next morning, I thought I was going to feel magical. Nothing felt different. That's just my experience. I wish I could say it was the most magical feeling, and I didn't have that at all. It was just like, cool, this is out of the way. Let me focus.
You brought up an interesting thing because I struggle with this sometimes with entrepreneurs. Tony Robbins has this philosophy of 3 different type of business owners. He says the entrepreneur, the visionary. He has the leader that likes to develop and teach. And then you have the artists, right? People that get into apparel because they're artistic, or nursing because they want to help people, or solar because it's going green. Yeah. I'm not an artist in any stretch of the imagination. I can care less about the widget. What passion, even my holding company right now is called Rising Tides. It's really because of rising ship and helping other men and everyone succeed. My passion is my people. I can care less about the widget. Are you kind of the same?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I sold all these products and millions of pieces of articles of clothing. I didn't care. Yeah. They would show me the new designs, the designer, and I'd be like, okay, great. Tell me the costs on all of them and put the markup, and let's see if we could sell them.
It's all part of a P&L. It's just a cog, and what's the exit?
I honestly couldn't care any less. I didn't care. I never got passionate about anything I sold, whether it was chocolates in high school, trading cards as a kid.
It's a means to an end.
Didn't matter to me. I always think, though, if I would have gone to that garage sale instead of finding underwear that I ended up building a business around, if I would have found baseball bats or something else that would have been more cool, maybe I would have gotten a little bit passionate because I liked the sport. But that's not what happened. Now, I will say this. I am opening a jiu-jitsu academy here in South Florida, along with a black belt who's going to run the day-to-day. And that I'm starting to get a little bit passionate about because as we got an LOI, almost agreed to at this point, and we're hoping to open in a few months once we lock in the lease, I'm starting to get a little bit of excitement toward that because again, but for the same reason that I coach guys. In jiu-jitsu, who is it? It's mostly guys, right? Even in the kids class, it's mostly boys. How much I wish that as a kid, I could have been part of an academy. I wanted to do karate back in the kung fu days and all that. But to help kids get better and build them into better men, I'm super passionate about that.
I love that. This question wasn't even on my radar, but now it is. It's like, do you feel, I know for me, like living vicariously through my children, because of the opportunities and different things and exposure and proximity to things that I would never have been exposed to. Do you feel like sometimes that's healing, watching your children just kind of go through
yeah.
life differently through a different
Yeah.
lens?
When I was 18 or 19, I went to the Marine Corps recruiter because I heard that was the toughest one. And I wanted to join the military. I always did as a little kid. And I took the ASVAB. I did some trainings with them and they gave me a date and they go, you just got to sign here. Here's your job. It was to work in an armory. And I go, whatever. I don't care what the job is. And I went home and told my parents and they yelled at me. My dad told me, what are you, crazy? You're going to die. And a Marine, they go first, right? And I go, oh my God, I guess I'm doing the wrong thing. And then the next morning I went to my grandparents' house and my grandfather talked me out of it too. And so there's an example of something where I was talked out of. When my son told me he wanted to become a U.S. soldier, I said, absolutely, do it. He did 3 years in the reserves. This last Sunday, we shipped him off. Now he's in he's in the active service. So yeah, so there's an opportunity where I get to see the things he's going through when he earned his sharpshooter badge and all this stuff. I'm living through him, right?
Vicariously.
Yeah, my second son is an ultra marathon runner. Ran his first half marathon at 8 years old. The A1A, Fort Lauderdale, you could look it up, but it was like an hour, 47 minutes or something.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So now he's like an hour 19 for a half marathon, but he's run ultra marathons since high school. So I never got to do any. I was never signed up for a sport. I wanted to play Little League Baseball. My parents said, no, we don't know where it is. We don't know how much it costs. No, you're not doing it. Play in the street. So that's what I did. So yeah, absolutely. As I see the things that my kids are developing into, it gives me great joy to, but again, doing it under control. I don't give them anything. They're earning all of these things.
Yeah. And last but not least, shameless plugs. There'll obviously be backlinks to you on the bottom of the pod, but how do people find you if they want to get
I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn. I reply to every single message. Happy to connect with anybody. If you have a question, if there's something you don't have somebody to talk to about something in business or life, be happy to give you my 2 cents. And if you sound interesting, I'll send you a link. We can book a call and just chat. I'm not going to try to sell you anything.
Perfect, man. Well, once again, man, thank you for coming. Pain points where real pain equals real growth. It's been a pleasure, man, getting to know you better. Our first chat went like an hour, just like organically. This one was perfect as well.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Are you stuck in that $3 to $10 million year-over-year revenue? Roofs in a Box is your all-in-one growth partner for modern construction companies. They combine AI, virtual staffing, and CRM solutions to help streamline operations. Replace your high fixed overhead with cost-effective systems and support. They empower you to run a smarter, leaner business, freeing up capital where it matters most. Mention this ad to save 10% on your next Roofs in a Box purchase. This episode of Pain Points is brought to you by Ringba. If your business relies on phone calls, you need to be working with them. Their technology will help you get the most money out of your marketing campaigns. Their call exchange, Ringba X, can deliver inbounds on demand to help grow your customer base. Now, I want to be transparent. Ringba and Adam did pay me to deliver that message, but I'm also a customer, and I've watched them help dozens of companies become more successful over the years. So if you sell a product or service over the phone, I guarantee a moment with their team will be worth it.